Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here. Now that my 2 informative videos are done for the day, it's time to talk about current events in the online fitness community. And apparently Jason Buendia, who I have done one other video about, just had a surgery to reattach one of his pecs that he tore, I guess maybe within the last week. So let me put on my +5 out of weaponsmithing, work on skilling up my crafting a little bit, and let's talk about this. Alright guys, and this is what I want to talk to you guys about when I talk about good form. And I've talked about this in videos and people don't seem to grasp why I say this stuff and why I say cheat reps and bad techniques in a lot of ways do not have a place in your training. This is again another perfect example. And it ultimately comes down to just respecting your connective tissue and checking your ego at the door. And you know what? This doesn't just happen with 1-rep maxes. Alright, there are tons of bodybuilders out there who tear body parts on the 8th rep, the 10th rep, the 12th rep. All right, I don't want people to think that when we say this that it's only really low reps that puts you at risk of injury. If you are fatigued from overuse, all right, you get micro tears in your connective tissue. Your tendons get little micro tears in them and they lose structural integrity that has to heal and cause them to hypertrophy and thicken up. All right, your connective tissue gets micro traumas in it. That's why it grows as a result of training. Those micro traumas can happen from volume as well, just like they can by doing 1-rep maxes. All right, these things all stress your connective tissue. It's stress. It causes micro traumas. If you start using really bad form that compromises the connective tissue, and I'll talk about some examples here in a minute, you can tear that same tissue on the 8th rep just like you can on a 1-rep max. All right, you can tear it on the 8th rep. You high rep guys, all right, it does happen. Absolutely does happen. And you have to be aware of that. You've got to respect these things. And this is an example of someone who I talked about. I said, you know, the way he trains a little bit's going to get him hurt. You know, some people say, well, you know, you can talk about his bench press, you know, instead of his deadlift. Because, yeah, you said his deadlift, you were shocked that he wasn't stronger than that, that he couldn't complete a 500-pound deadlift, hitching and straps and everything else, failing to lock it. A lot like Strap-on Destiny when he failed his 585 on camera. Now, people say, yeah, but, you know, he benches more than you. So when people said that, I went to look, and I saw his bench press form, and I believe I commented, he's going to get hurt with the way he benches because he can't bench as much as he's got on the bar. He can't actually bench 400 pounds. And when I say that, what I mean is to bench a weight, you need to be able to come down, touch it to your chest for a brief pause, and press it. With your butt staying on the bench, heels and feet not moving, your feet planted somehow to the floor without moving. And you press it from a dead stop on your chest. He bounces it. Then I went and saw some other footage of him training with some other people. I think the Strength Cartel guys. Same thing. He bounces a little bit. Not just touch and go, he has a little bit of bounce there. Now, people say, well, why does that matter? You're still getting it up. Yeah, but your muscles aren't getting it up. Meaning you're using external force to create inertia and help bounce the weight. You're not pressing from a dead stop. Accordingly, you don't necessarily build that strength at the bottom that you need, which carries over to how tight your muscles get. Right? Training that muscle to load under a stretch and be able to sustain a stretch will build connective tissue. It will also build a certain amount of flexibility in the muscle. You don't do that, you can end up with muscles that get a little tight. And then what happens when you go heavy one time and something goes wrong, boom, you come down and you snap it. You snap the tendon. You snap the tendon. You know, the same thing happens with dumbbells. People say, oh, well, see, there you go. It's the barbell bench press. Really? Devin Physique tore his pec doing dumbbells. Did a whole video on how that happened. I broke down what he did in his technique, what caused it, how you avoid that. Dumbbell bench pressing isn't any safer. Pecs tear easily. All right, pectorals are an extremely common injury as far as the tendon detaching and have to be surgically reattached. All right, how many YouTubers do we know of this happened to? Lane Norton, Devin Physique, Jeremy Buendia. This is really common, guys. It's very common. And it has to do with poor training practices. So again, one of the reasons I tell people, look, lift what you're capable of lifting. Very rarely will your muscles contract successfully against a weight that will tear connective tissue. In other words, if form is perfect and you are actually using the muscles to correctly lift a weight through its fullest effective range of motion, it's actually very, very rare for tendons to rupture. Can it still happen? Sure it can. It does. It cuts the chance by 90% though, at least. It's very rare for someone who pause benches all the time to tear a pec. It's very rare for someone who dumbbell presses and comes all the way down for a deep stretch with the elbows tucked and then back up, who goes to the terminal range of motion on the dumbbell press. It's very, very rare for someone who trains that way on the lift year-round to tear a pectoral. Partials with the dumbbells tear pectorals. Partials with the bench press tear pectorals. Bouncing the bar off your chest tears pecs. Okay? It's very rare for a pause bencher, whether it's barbells or dumbbells, who goes to the full range of motion and stops and then presses from a dead stop. It's very rare for them to overload the pecs in such a way that it tears. Does it happen? Sure, but it's like 1 in a million. All right, this is someone who learned the hard way. What I'm trying to tell everyone is bouncing the bar off your chest. Yes, it lets you throw another 40, 50 pounds on the bar. In some cases more. Yes, it lets you lift more weight. But you're doing it because you're using an external force to help you initiate drive. It's not your pecs doing it. And it can create pectorals and tendons and connective tissue that are potentially compromised and weak. And then when you go too heavy one day and you're not recovered because you've done too much microtraumas, or you further cause microtraumas in the middle of an 8-rep set, and then you start bouncing because it gets hard, it snaps. Same thing with hitching. I said before, this guy is going to be at real risk of an injury on the deadlift. For the same reason that strap-on Destiny is eventually going to get hurt on the deadlift. That hitching nonsense. Yes, in the heat of the moment, it happens in competition. You guys watched me kind of do almost a hitch before, where I was jerky on the way up, right? I did it, and I said in a video it was a bad example. I shouldn't have done it, that I shouldn't have done that rep, that I should have checked my ego at the door, that I predisposed myself to a risk. But I said that in the video. All right, you guys remember that? It was earlier this year in a deadlift training session, and I felt bad about it, but I recorded it to make the example, and I went ahead and uploaded it to make the example of this is what you don't do. I am too old with too much experience to do things like that. I should know better. But you see guys doing this stuff to show off all the time. And this is how you get hurt. This is how you get hurt. Lifting a weight you're not capable of lifting. And I'm not talking about, going too heavy, like as in you're just too strong. It very rarely happens when you're actually strong enough to physically lift the weight with good technique. Even in powerlifting meets, it's rare for someone who's got their technique dialed in to see these injuries. It does happen, but it's a lot rarer. It's when form breaks down because you're lifting a weight that's too heavy for you to correctly lift. Because maybe you're too psyched up, you're going for an all-time PR to meet, or you're just showing off in the gym. This is how it happens. Now, again, this is a guy who just maybe ended his career, depending on how this heals up. May or may not be career ending. But here's the question I would ask all of you out there. If you love to train, is a training injury just because you want to show off an ego lift and not bench press correctly, or whether even dumbbell press correctly? Devin Physique. Injuries happen just as often with dumbbells. All right, it's not any less injury prone than a barbell. Showing off when it comes to tendons that tear easily, like the pectorals, is silly. It's not going to be worth it to you. It's not going to be worth it to you. And the problem we've got right now, again, is that we got guys who aren't wise enough to know better. They don't have enough experience in the iron game. They're not educated enough in training, because you got to remember, a lot of these guys are just genetically gifted and on drugs. They don't really know that much. They're demonstrating for people bad technique, and then they'll follow it. And these guys probably learned it from the same guys. You know what? I bet Jeremy Buendia learned this from watching a bunch of stupid bodybuilders. A bunch of meatheads who didn't know any better themselves, and it's just monkey see, monkey do. And he imitated them, learned to bench press the way that he benches, tore his pec, and it's probably never occurred to him that he was going to get hurt doing what he was doing. Never occurred to him, and he just teaches the same thing to other people. And there are going to be people out there who follow him who just say, oh man, he just tore it because he's so strong. And they're going to imitate what he does, and maybe one of his followers down the road is going to tear a pectoral doing the same thing. It's the bouncing on the bench press. You need to bring the bar to a stop on your chest. Even if it's just for a split second, you need to come to a dead stop. All right? And if you train that way year-round, including your warm-ups, pectorals don't get torn. It's going to be very, very rare. Not saying impossible, but you're going to dramatically cut down the risk. Now, in his case, it was very obvious that this is what caused it. You combine that with too many drugs, and there you have it. Go snap. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.